Yeah, good morning, everybody. It's another one of those dry and very sunny mornings here in Pune. We're still not getting any rain. I thought today I might speak of peace. Yeah, there's not much of it around these days, doesn't seem. Many years ago, Ellen gave me a book. It was by a Zen Buddhist monk from Vietnam who was alive during the Vietnam War. His name was Thich Nhat Hanh. He became part of, well, I guess what you call it, an engaged school of Buddhism. It was unusual. The war provoked it. And this was the time when monks would go into the streets and set themselves on fire. Yeah, it's a pretty horrible thought. I probably may never fully understand that motivation, but well, Thich Nhat Hanh, instead of lighting himself, decided he'd go talk to Charles de Gaulle about the war. Then later he had audience with John Kennedy about it and so on, and he attempted to convince them that peace was the only way in this, and they weren't getting anywhere. Well, whether his efforts had any effect that actually stopped the war, it's hard to say. But his efforts definitely had an impact on some people. They affected me. As Ellen later gave me a book that had been written by him, Peace with Every Step by Thich Nhat Hanh. Eventually, I actually met him. He was speaking in Berkeley, and we went down to listen to him. I will have to say, I'm not into mystics, gurus, or any of that other jive, but I just got to say that this was probably the closest thing to a holy man I have ever met in my life. He was pretty much all about peace, and it seemed to be the only reason. It wasn't about money, power, control. He had a smile that challenged the Mona Lisa. Yeah, although everybody looks at that Mona Lisa, and we go, what is she smiling about? What is on her lips? I think only the artist will ever know. We probably won't ever, really. But with Thich Nhat Hanh, it becomes evident when you look at him that his smile is about peace, and it's very deep. To look at it, it's hard not to have an emotional reaction like you do with the Mona Lisa. Well, within the book that he'd written, he has a mantra. At a time in my life, it was pretty hard to hold myself together after a divorce. And so for me, it was a pretty hard fall, and I was having a hard time with it. Well, the mantra that he used was, as he breathes in, he lives. As he breathes out, he smiles. I breathe in, I live. I breathe out, I smile. Well, now, in Buddhism, the breath is what it is all about. And I can say that outside of the religion, breath is really what it's all about. There's profound ancient wisdom and all that. When confronted with difficult people and situations in life, learning to pause and take a breath usually divides you from your reaction. First reaction, I'm going to choke you, punch you in the face. No, I think I'll just be quiet. Yeah. Now, I found it was possible to do this even while driving down the freeway. Some clown gets me into a state where I want to road rage, and instead I just start watching my breath and saying, in my mind, I live, I smile. And you can slow your breath down with this, and it will calm you. Uh, but if you can actually manage to smile, not just say the word, sometimes it's amazing what happens, because the smiles, they contain, well, a lot of chemicals that start to run in your body when you smile as compared to when you frown. Of course, smiles, I tend to find, are much easier to maintain than frowns anyway, and I'm kind of lazy. But a true smile will stimulate happy brain chemistry, more balanced thoughts. Well, sometimes while I'm doing this, I forget to smile. I say the word. I get up and I'm still the grumpy gardener. Well, I've caught myself at it, I know that. And so it helped me one day when I realized if I had met Thich Nhat Hanh, and that smile, just it radiates. Well, these days when I say smile, I visualize his face smiling at me in my mind. And when I look at that smile, it brings some kind of an energy into me too, just like the Mona Lisa's does. It was just the other day that I was doing this, and I really successfully managed. We were both smiling at each other. And I realized that I was smiling all the way to the bottom of my body. I mean, I suppose you could say my toes curled a bit, but no, definitely my entire digestive tract, right down to my butt. Yeah, I smiled right on down to my butt. You get the vagus nerve and the bacteria in your intestines that produce dopamine. That's a connection to happiness in your brain. So it actually seemed appropriate that if you're really going to smile, dude, you got to smile all the way down. It was a deep feeling that held. The rest of the day can go into complete chaos. As they say, hell in a handbasket, my mom used to claim. But it started right. It started right. Mm-hmm. Well, over time then, I began to expand on this mantra during my meditation periods. Yeah, that's right, Gracie. I did. So after I could smile, I would then say pause. I breathe in, I live. I breathe out, I pause. Yeah, and then after that I would eventually move to I live, I release. Yeah, in the effort to dispel most of the busyness swirling around inside my head. Yeah, I would tend to turn my palms upward and visualize most of this busyness, almost like hairballs. Yeah, right, Gracie? Cats get them. Yeah, they kind of, all the energy turns in on itself. They're little spirals and little balls, and they're messy. They're not fun. They're not nice. And I let them go. So I'll start off pulling in the air and realizing me and the air are really pretty much the same thing. There isn't much barrier between us. And I'm realizing that that's bringing my life, and I go about smiling over it. Eventually, managed to pause everything that was spinning around my head, and then let it go. Right, girl? But there are a few things in this world, that come to us as blessing. That cat right there in mine was one of them. Getting to meet Thich Nhat Hanh was another. Hey, aloha.